Well, WDSU investigative reporter Cassie Schirm was first to report this leak and dives deeper into what it revealed.
There are hours of recordings from when Officer Vappy was questioned about his time working for the mayor. Some say now that they've been leaked, the investigation is compromised. I got a behind-the-scenes look at how they're monitoring those adults and quickly track down someone not following the rules.
I'm going to get a 15-minute head start, and I'm going to be driving off here in the city of New Orleans, and we're going to test to see how accurate the locations of these ankle monitors are.
Do y'all know where they're at?
The answer to that, you mean in real time, if you're asking that in real time, no, we do not.
But how they're being used and what I uncovered has some victims of teen crime concerned. WDSU Investigates found for the past decade, NOPD's response to DWI incidents has decreased while accident deaths and injuries have increased. But just how much money did these two celebratory trips cost? The answer is we don't know. After multiple public record requests, the city continues to not give us that information, so we went to the mayor for that number. Do you know how much you've spent for the past two sister city trips?
Two sister city, no, it's a collect. I do business on behalf of the city and not just in isolation of one sister city that you just mentioned. It's comprehensive in regards to the business that I do on behalf of the city. So no, I don't know offhand, just looking through the tunnel. I look at the whole.
Do you understand why some people are concerned, though?
I cannot, I don't know what you're asking me.
First responders were sent to the wrong location or were misinformed, or even other situations where they weren't dispatched at all. The council members were pushing back on, is this actually feasible for some of these other spending fees? What would you say to that?
We showed them that the city is flush with money.
Do you have any evidence to show that the consent decree is hurting officers?
That's right. It's the type of tires that were bought, how the city bought them, and where those tires that were replaced went. It's about the Forward Together. I know a lot of people have been curious about the funds being, frozen at this time. What would be your response to some people who are saying maybe there is something going on that needs to be looked at financially? At any point, do we lose money if we don't use it in time?
Yes, if we don't spend it in a timely manner.
The award ceremonies we've had.
You don't show up.
Thank you.
You don't show up.
I was going to say that. We invite you to acknowledge the good work that our officers do, and we never see you.
Never.
But if they did something wrong,
right there,
we have everyone on that scene.
I know here at WDSU we have covered some of those academies. We have been to some of those graduations, and even
we appreciate
earlier,
that. The last ones you were not.
And even the last week we did cover the investigators being hired. How is WDSU a part of the problem when we are covering the good and the bad that's going on?
Well, it's how you cover it, and it's your headlines. It's how you do it. WDSU Investigates has uncovered a spot where multiple ATM shells have been found after being stolen from convenience stores all across the city.
Recent allegations from some community groups that are saying Hano isn't following HUD regulations and rules.
Okay.
What would you say to that?
Are you going to be helping with paying any of the money back for the upgrade?
Excuse me, sorry.
Local, late breaking. This is WDSU News at 6.
First at 6, New Orleans City Council leaders are taking a step towards capping Mayor LaToya Cantrell's travel after two recent trips to Europe have led to a lot of criticism.
Seems like everybody has something to say. We took those concerns straight to the mayor. WDSU investigative reporter Cassie Schirm spoke with the mayor. Cassie, what pushed council members to try and put limits on her travel spending in the first place?
Well, guys, this all started after her last two recent trips. The first one, Switzerland, the second one, France. Now, after these two trips, a lot of criticism came about and concerns from people saying there's already so much work that's needed to be done here in the city, from the stalled projects to the surging crime. Now, some of her critics say she should be spending her time and money on cleaning up the city. So I asked the mayor a question many people are wondering at this moment: why now? There's been a lot of complaints and criticism for, is now the right time to leave the country when there's so much going on in the city? What would you say to that?
That there's always the right time to conduct the city's business, and especially expand our cultural footprint that drives the local economy, and making sure that we're making those connections that only embrace our cultural bearers.
Mayor LaToya Cantrell's recent trips are now being scrutinized. Some say her priorities should be focused locally on crime and the city's economy.
It's a shame that our mayor, she take lavish vacation on the taxpayer money in foreign countries while people are dying in the city of crime.
They want answers now. We need the long-term effort on crime fighting, but we need some proactive things to happen right now.
LaToya not telling the truth.
But it's not just community members concerned about how money is being spent. That's why City Council President Helena Moreno and Vice President J.P. Morrell filed legislation capping non-essential travel expenses for city elected officials at $1,000 per trip. Non-essential trips would essentially stop trips like the one she's recently took to Switzerland and the French Riviera to reinforce sister city agreements. But just how much money did these two celebratory trips cost? The answer is we don't know. After multiple public record requests, the city continues to not give us that information, so we went to the mayor for that number. Do you know how much you've spent for the past two sister city trips?
Two sister city, no, it's a collect. I do business on behalf of the city and not just in isolation of one sister city that you just mentioned. It's comprehensive in regards to the business that I do on behalf of the city. So no, I don't know offhand, just looking through the tunnel. I look at the whole.
Do you understand why some people are concerned, though?
I cannot, I don't know what you're asking me.
Now, this isn't the first time Cantrell's spending has been questioned. In 2019, the city spent thousands of dollars for Cantrell and her staff to go to Ghana for an Essence event. And when she was on city council, she was investigated for misusing her city credit card, charging $9,000 for food in various Walmart runs. Now, if this ordinance is passed through, it won't just impact the mayor, it also impact council members as well. So we will be following this very closely.
Late breaking. This is WDSU News at 6.
Right now at 6, Mayor LaToya Cantrell will not be taking her third trip overseas in 5 weeks as planned. And all of this comes after WDSU pressured the mayor for answers on her travel expenses and pressure from the public. Mayor Cantrell was set to go to Singapore weeks after drawing backlash on her use of time and the city's money.
That's right. WDSU's investigative reporter Cassie Schirm has been following this story from the beginning. Cassie, we obtained documents from her travels. What do we know so far?
Well, guys, after a records request, we now know that Mayor LaToya Cantrell spent $10,000 flying to and from Switzerland, but that's just a small picture of what the actual trip cost, and it cost taxpayers. Now, we're still waiting to hear more on the France trip and anticipating the one to Singapore. But in this interview with our partner radio station WBOK, Mayor Cantrell says she will no longer be leaving today for her trip to Singapore to attend the World City Summit.
But I am not in Singapore,
right?
Because I'm here tending to the men and women of the police department.
Mayor LaToya Cantrell was the only mayor in the U.S. invited to the World City Summit in Singapore.
I was going because the city of New Orleans is on the front lines of climate change. We're looked upon for innovation because we're doing the work in our city. And I'm asked by world leaders to be present, but because of wanting to ensure that our police officers are loved and respected and hear directly from me, I felt that it was best that I'm boots on the ground for this.
This comes after WDSU Investigates looks into the mayor's trips to Switzerland and France on the taxpayers' dime. It spurred a lot of controversy when the Singapore trip was announced at a Gordon Plaza committee meeting this week. Just how much the mayor has spent this year on trips is still unknown. From the public record request documents so far, we know that the mayor's flight to and from Switzerland for a sister city trip was nearly $10,000 alone. We don't have a price tag for the social media manager, director of international relations, and executive protection she brought along. Also, Cantrell booked her flight only a week before she left. Why was the trip booked so late?
Don't know that either.
On Thursday, we went to the mayor's office for a photo op press event of her signing the facial recognition ordinance for NOPD to ask her some more questions about her travels, but reporters were not allowed inside.
But this is a photo op only.
Can she come out after the fact, though?
I said no further comments.
I have a quick question, maybe.
When photographers tried asking a question inside, the mics were swiftly picked up.
It doesn't matter where the mayor is.
Gregory Joseph with the mayor's communication team was able to answer some of our questions regarding how the mayor can lead the city out of the country.
Whether she's here or whether she's on an international trip bringing the culture of the city and all the genius that we have to other parts of the world, we're always focused on doing the job of the mayor of the city of New Orleans.
But we have more questions about the cost of her trip to France and the total expenses overall this year. And we hear there could be other sister city trips on the horizon, too.
Is the mayor going to a sister city trip in Africa?
I don't know any knowledge of a sister city trip in Africa.
The previous trips to France and Switzerland were to renew the sister city contracts and spread the city's culture. But some have said this isn't the right time. Just last week, I asked the mayor, why now?
There's been a lot of complaints and criticism for, is now the right time to leave the country when there's so much going on in the city? What would you say to that?
That there's always the right time to conduct the city's business and especially expand our cultural footprint that drives the local economy.
Just the community members who are concerned about the cost. City Council President Helena Moreno and Vice President J.P. Morrell filed legislation capping non-essential travel expenses for city elected officials at $1,000 per trip.
And Cassie, there are rules in place already for city leaders for their travels?
That's right. So the City of New Orleans Chief Administrative Office sent out this policy here on July 1st. It says an employee is required to purchase the lowest airfare available, and if an employee does fly anything other than coach, which the mayor flew business going to and from Switzerland, that person must pay the difference in.
I, as a mother, should still have my Cherie and should still have her David. It's not fair.
One mother is worried the city of New Orleans isn't doing enough to protect people this big Mardi Gras weekend.
Well, this as the 4th anniversary of her daughter's death approaches. Her daughter was killed in 2019 when a drunk driver plowed into a group of bicyclists after the Endymion parade.
WDSU investigative reporter Cassie Schirm in studio. Cassie, you found DWI enforcement has drastically dwindled.
That's right. WDSU Investigates found for the past decade, NOPD's response to DWI incidents has decreased while accident deaths and injuries have increased. And Cherie Wall's mom says she can't help but think more can be done to stop what happened to her daughter from happening to anyone else.
I love you with my very soul. And if I could have you back, you could have my place so that you could live.
The past 4 years have been painful for mother Louise Benjamin. Her daughter Cherie Walls was killed by a drunk driver in Mid-City after the Endymion parade back in 2019.
She's probably the best daughter that anyone could have.
The crash was all caught on camera. In the video, you see the victims on their bikes on Esplanade Avenue. Less than 30 seconds later, Tashante Tony flies by in his black Camaro. Traveling 80 miles per hour, he almost strikes one bicyclist, hits several cars, and then plows into the victim, killing Walls and another victim, David Hines. And Tony didn't stop. Video shows him crash into another vehicle on Esplanade. His car spins out of the median. Tony opens the door and takes off running. His blood alcohol content was more than twice the legal limit.
Your vehicle became a weapon like a shotgun that put a bullet through somebody's head and killed them.
Tony pleaded guilty that October to 16 criminal counts, including vehicular homicide. The judge gave him a 90-year sentence. It was reduced to 65 after an appeal. 2 years before that crash, a drunk driver plowed into a crowd during the Endymion parade. At least 24 people were hurt, including now interim police chief Michelle Woodfork.
It happened just a matter of seconds. We heard impact and people were scattering.
And now Cherie Wall's mother is concerned about the recent lack of law enforcement stops to catch impaired drivers.
Not only am I nervous, there will be more deaths. And how many deaths, how many lives? The city of New Orleans takes this seriously.
WDSU Investigates found the department arrested 69 drunk drivers last year. In 2018, it was nearly 600 arrests, double that in 2014.
There were 69 DWI arrests in 2022. It's abysmal. It's horrific.
Former police chief Ronald Surpass says when he was on the force, that's the same amount of arrests 2 of his officers would do in 1 month.
It wasn't that long ago in my career I was a sergeant and I was in charge of the New Orleans Police Department DWI unit, and we had 6 or 7 officers. And each of those officers every month, just those 6 or 7 officers would average 20 to 30 DWI arrests alone per person. DWI enforcement requires a specially trained officer who is essentially a detective. They have to have a lot of experience so that their testimony works in court.
Interim Superintendent Michelle Woodfork says the lack of officers is a major contributing factor, but they are working on a solution.
We still have a manpower problem, so of course the numbers in our traffic unit aren't up to what they used to be, but we're working back to that, getting the OSS system in place, working that contract out so someone else can actually handle traffic accidents, and we can get back to doing more proactive traffic stops for DWI and the like.
But Benjamin's worried that's not enough. That's why in February of 2021, she worked with Mothers Against Drunk Driving to help raise awareness.
My son, David Hines, and my daughter, Cherie Walls, was killed by a drunk driver.
We did a video, and it was supposed to be used for training at the city of New Orleans. We went through painstaking lengths to put that video together, and believe me, that was the most difficult video I've ever done.
Bam, 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 he hit 80 miles an hour, 17 times, a bike, a person, a car.
WDSU Investigates found that video was not sent to all city employees like MAD had discussed with a city representative.
When they were ready to present the video, MAD kept getting excuses, and then it was just washed.
During that time frame, multiple city employees were arrested for driving while impaired, leaving Benjamin wondering why the video wasn't being shown.
It's kind of like what they say, we were ghosted. And I think it was political. It wasn't the right timing. I forget what was going on at the time, but the insinuation was it's just not a good time to show that right now.
Now, we reached out to the mayor's office days ago with multiple emails asking who saw that video and why it was not shown to all city employees like previously discussed. They have not responded. But whether anyone sees that video or not, Benjamin says she has one message for the public.
I'm pleading with people there in this Mardi Gras season. Think of my Cherie and think of David.
Now, state police will be upping their enforcement, so hopefully they'll be able to help more this weekend and hopefully even after Mardi Gras season.
Good reporting and an excellent reminder.
Like the wheelie popping, doing like 60, I think it can be a dangerous situation for sure. Something bad's going to happen from it.
Well, WDSU Investigates kicking one crime trend in New Orleans to the curb. We're talking about ATVs on our roads, interstates, and neighborhoods. It is a crime that breaks state law, but we are witnessing it more often now.
WDSU Investigates reporter Cassie Schirm found out what seems to be a shocking lack of enforcement.
It's become a regular occurrence to see ATV drivers driving up and down the roadways where I'm standing right now here on Canal Street. But what WDSU Investigates just found is only 13 ATV citations have been given out to drivers from NOPD since 2016. But some of the drivers on the roadway here tell me that's not enough. You can hear them in the neighborhood and see them driving in and out of traffic on the interstate and even downtown running red lights.
You're in your car and there are 30 or 40 four-wheelers surrounding you. So yeah, I think it's picked up a lot lately and more crazy and brazen.
For drivers sharing the street, there's a lot of worry the situation could take a left turn.
Probably more concerned about one of the ATVs bumping into another one and causing an accident and you're running over someone. Probably the nervous drivers, like I might hit one of these ATVs.
Driving ATVs on roads and highways in Louisiana is against the state law. But the law has not stopped drivers, and the consequences have been fatal.
I talked to God from the time I seen her. Talked to God till I got the ambulance. I talked to God when I was in the hospital, and I talked to God while she was there, and I've been talking to God since.
It's been close to 9 years since 37-year-old Daphne Cola was struck and killed by an ATV rider in the Treme walking out of a bar. Her sister, Tiffany Cola, says it was her worst nightmare.
It was gruesome. That's all I could tell you.
After Cola's sister died, she said she was hoping there would be more enforcement so this wouldn't happen to anyone else.
I made a promise before she took her last breath that I would make sure I get them off the street. I don't know how just yet, but I will.
But since then, other accidents have happened. Fast forward to 2017. Another crash ended with the death of a rider.
1 minute, he's just a young boy. He's having, thinking he's having fun, and the next minute he lost his life.
And this past March, an ATV and a school bus collided in Algiers. A child on the bus and the driver of the ATV were hurt. The problem spans outside New Orleans. Plaquemines Parish Sheriff deputies are seen chasing ATV riders on the highway just last year. And in April, one teen in Slidell died crashing an ATV. Another teen was hurt. But not everyone agrees that ATVs should be illegal.
And this is our culture. We ride on the street.
WDSU Investigates thought it was important to reach out to ATV drivers and riders themselves. They described to me that this is a way of life, and they're actually helping to reduce other crimes.
Different energies. When you just wake up and you don't have nothing to do, that's why, the next thing you know, they see a gun or this, or they doing real crazy things that they shouldn't be doing that will really change their life.
In 2018, a state law added penalties and jail time for reckless operation of bikes and ATVs, including speeding, disregarding traffic signs, wheelies, and stunts. If caught, you could be fined up to $500 and 90 days in jail.
This has been a constant complaint, constant issues with this, and the neighbors and the businesses have had enough.
But the problem has continued years later.
What can the city of New Orleans do to stop this?
It's very dangerous, and we've had loss of life in our community, in our city, by this type of activity.
I asked Mayor LaToya Cantrell about the efforts to combat this trend.
What can we do? I believe it's what we are doing. One, asking for just increased enforcement on our state highways by LSP. Wanting to beef up our traffic patrols.
The crime is happening in front of officers, and Mayor Cantrell says officers can chase, but the biggest concern is protecting all lives at all costs.
They can have authorized pursuits. They can. But in that, we have to think about everyone and the dangers that present.
But drivers having to share the roadway say more needs to be done before someone else dies.
It's inevitable. It's been going on too long. The numbers are huge. The occurrences are too frequent. I think it's inevitable something bad's going to happen.
Now, the city tells me they're asking for help from the state to tackle this problem while also beefing up their traffic division, saying it will help to get more boots on the roads. Reporting here in New Orleans, I'm Cassie Schirm, WDSU Investigates.
8 cars stolen in just one day. WDSU has been tracking the data, and we told you yesterday 376 cars were stolen in New Orleans just 2 weeks into the new year. And in just the last 24 hours, we have now passed that 400 mark. WDSU investigative reporter Cassie Schirm live in New Orleans. Cassie, crime data shows that this crime is not just concentrated to one specific neighborhood in the city.
That's right, Travers, and 404 to be exact. And with the lack of officers, some community members tell me they're having to take their own investigations into their own hands.
There where that glass is on the ground.
One by one.
Less than a minute. That's all it takes.
Cars are stolen.
It's kind of just like a normal thing in the city, in New Orleans. You kind of expect it now.
In 2022, nearly 4,000 cars stolen, leaving car owners feeling helpless as they watch their cars taken, caught on camera, losing hope of getting their cars back.
You can see it takes them anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds to crawl in a back, knock out a back window, crawl in there, get in the front.
So where do these stolen cars go? They're dropped just about anywhere. And most of the time when they're found by police or the owners, there's literally nothing left inside.
And if people find abandoned ones, then hopefully someone will see it and be like, oh, hey, that's mine,
That's what prompted one anonymous community member to create an Instagram account, Stolen Auto NOLA. taking matters into their own hands after their stolen car was recovered through social media in December.
Got it back like that, and I was just like, you know what? I want to start a page where people have one place they can come to, post pictures and information about their vehicles, and hopefully we can help some people find them.
This is how it works. There's a database in Excel that lists names, makes, models, and license plates, and then posts tips and reports.
We had 3 people send tips on one single car. So we traced it from the upper ninth to the lower ninth, and then like hours later, someone saw it again in the French Quarter, and that person will probably get that car back today.
In just 1 month, the account has more than 180 cars stolen in their database. So far, the page has recovered dozens with help from the community.
And every day it just gets bigger and bigger, and we have more people sending in more tips, which is the amazing thing because the community is ready to cooperate.
All in an effort to assist NOPD.
They're not out there having to search for, these, I think they call them like nuisance thefts and everything, and having to search for the cars. If we can just be like, oh, hey, it's here and this is the owner and they're there waiting for you, that's a giant chunk out of their job.
Now, an important thing to note, if you do find your car, NOPD says the best thing you can do is call 911 and wait for an officer to respond. Reporting here in New Orleans, I'm Cassie Schirm, WDSU News. Back to you.
All right, Cassie, thank you.